Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, how are you today?
I am feeling very good, Bryce, because we have a bonus episode.
I know. Yeah, we don't get to do these very often. I think this might be bonus episode maybe 7 or 8, I want to say, but yeah, I'm always so excited when we get to do extra episodes for our listeners. And today we're doing something a little bit different actually, and it's on a topic that, if you're looking at library podcasts, it's something that you probably wouldn't expect a library podcast to cover. But the one thing that we like to do at EPL, and especially on our podcast, is share stories. And today we have a great Edmonton story. Not like it's a story that the whole world really knows about, and it took place here in Edmonton. And that, of course, is the Stanley Cup playoffs. How Edmonton was a hub city, and how the NHL was here over the course of the summer, and they successfully awarded the Stanley Cup just a couple of weeks ago. And that's a story that we're sharing today.
We talked about it a little bit on a past episode when we talked about your viral tweet that when the picture of Edmonton on NBC I think showed the shot of the stadium, but it was not Rogers Place that they were showing.
No, it was old, like Rexall Place or Northlands Coliseum, if you will. And yeah, it probably didn't showcase the greatest shot of Edmonton, but that's okay. They fixed that all up. And one of the people who really helped us fix that up is one of our guests today. We actually have two guests joining us from the Oilers Entertainment Group. They were instrumental with helping kind of put the proposal together for Edmonton to host the playoffs. And that is first person we're going to be chatting with today is Jody Young. He's a friend of mine, and he's the vice president of fan experience and security.
Another great title. Sometimes we have librarians on who have pretty cool titles, but VP of fan experience sounds pretty fancy.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And then also joining us for a separate interview later on in this episode is Stu Ballantyne. And he's the senior vice president of operations and the general manager of Rogers Place. Caroline, you are the manager of of the Capilano branch. Can you imagine being the manager of Rogers Place?
I cannot. I think that there would be so many moving pieces on that, but after hearing a little bit about everything they had to be considering is just wow. My head is a little spinning, and that's knowing that everything they did worked out well. So I'm a little bit in awe of the work that they do.
So the two interviews that you're about to hear recorded with Jody and Stu, and we asked them about how Edmonton was selected to be a hub city. What kind of preparations had to go into Rogers Place in order to host these games? Who did they work with locally to kind of pull this up, like all the different agencies? We touch on COVID testing. We touch on eating in the bubble. What else do we touch on, Caroline? There's a lot there.
Yeah, everything from the special moments, the once in a lifetime opportunities that they had as kind of being in the bubble and bubble adjacent, as well as what day-to-day life was like. Because as an incredible experience as it was, this was their job. This was their job. This was the players' job. This was the ice makers' job. So everyone was really, going in and putting in a day's work in the bubble, and we get the opportunity to hear what that was like.
Absolutely. We were so thrilled to chat with Jody and Stu. And yeah, we really hope, even if you're not a big hockey fan, we really think you're going to really enjoy this episode, and you're going to hear about some of the great teamwork that was put in off the ice to pull this whole thing together. And as Edmontonians, it's something I really think we should all be proud of. So without further ado, we present to you two interviews. We'll start with Jody Young from the Edmonton Oilers, and then we'll follow it up with Stu Ballantyne. Please enjoy. All right, so I'm excited about this one. Joining us today is my friend And he's also the vice president of fan experience and security with the Edmonton Oilers, Jody Young. Jody, welcome to Overdue Finds. How are you today?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
We're so happy you could be here with us.
Obviously, we've known each other for quite a few years. I was trying to remember, like, I also used to work for the Oilers as well. I was trying to think, when did you start with them? Because I was working for them. And then did you join us in, was it like 2006 or 2007?
Yeah, I started just a few weeks after the end of the 2006 playoff run. And I thought I was coming into a really excited group who just went to the Stanley Cup finals. And everyone had their heads down because they just lost in game 7 of the finals. And I was just excited to be there. And that's when you and I met. And it's been a good friendship since then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you came in, you're like, we're going to have so many other trips to the finals after this. Unfortunately, didn't work out that way, but I know, you love working there, and it's a really cool place to work. So, so today, of course, we are chatting all about kind of the Edmonton bubble and Edmonton kind of being one of the hub city hosts, kind of the main one anyway. So I just kind of want to start at the beginning though. So once the regular season ended in, I think it was like March 11th or 12th, for your role anyway, especially being vice president of fan experience, what did your job look like, I guess, moving forward once the NHL season was kind of put on hold, and how busy was that for you and your team?
Yeah, it was March 11th. It was a game against Winnipeg, and the following day, or maybe it was late that evening, the NHL put the season on hold. We really spent the next few days focusing, or I did anyway, from a fan experience perspective, focusing on our part-time staff. So our security team, fan experience, box office teams. Our goal as an organization was to keep them whole. They had a number of shifts remaining for Oiler games. And so we worked with our payroll and HR teams to make sure that we could keep those staff whole on those shifts that they would have lost for the Oiler games. So, we wanted to take care of our local group of staff, our Edmontonians, our teammates, and they keep the building running. So we needed to make sure that coming out of this, we were taking care of them. At the same time, we were focusing on communications to ticket holders, because ticket holders, we're supposed to have a game on the 13th, so 2 days after that last game, and we had to go through communications with them and start working with our sales and service teams on what to do with their tickets and everything else. And then once we got through those pieces, which took a number of days for sure, and maybe it was about a week or so to get through all of that, to get everything put together, we went really into shutdown mode on the arena and just started to look at it as like an end of season, and let's shut it down and let's see what happens from the league.
When did talk of having the playoffs in the bubble setting start? And at what point did Edmonton throw their name in the hat to be the host?
Yeah, so what I've learned since all of this and spending so much time with the league is that their internal discussions started almost immediately at the league level of what they were going to do next. There were tons of scenarios that I learned about. But for us, the date was April 21st. Stu Ballantyne, my boss and our GM of Rogers Place, called me in to discuss a special project. And I didn't know what he was going to get at. But I went in for the meeting, and that really just turned into the two of us working on the proposal to bring the league games to Edmonton. At the time, the league was talking about a 4-city hub, so 4 cities, 8 teams per hub. That quickly turned into 2 cities and 12 teams per hub, and then we were off to the races as far as planning was concerned. July 7th, so we had been dealing with the league multiple times a week with our proposal, not sure where it was going. Anyone who has Twitter was seeing the rumors of it. Does it go to Vegas? Does it go to Vancouver? Is Edmonton out of the running? And then Stu and I were on a call on July 7th, and the NHL staff from New York had just casually mentioned that a shipment had departed New York City and was on its way to Edmonton to arrive here on the 14th. Fast forward a couple more days, 3 days later, through a bunch of phone calls, and it was officially announced that Edmonton was one of the hubs for the Western Conference. But Stu and I still haven't been directly told that we are hosting Hub City. And like to this date, I mean, we've never actually been told that we're hosting Hub City. So it was a whirlwind. The NHL staff arrived then on the 14th. So within 4 days of the official announcement, the staff from New York City and Toronto arrived in Edmonton. And then we had 12 days between the 14th and the 26th of July, where we basically spent 16-hour days, everyone working to prepare for the teams. We were building lounges, locker rooms, building a fence line in downtown Edmonton, installing those huge video screens in Bowl. It was like a Drake concert was moving in. And then, of course, we had to build the ice, get the food and beverage in place. And then it was just about cleaning, and sanitizing and making sure that when the teams arrived and the bubble officially started on the 26th, that we were ready. And we were. We got through long days.
I love that they would never like officially confirm with you guys that we were going to be hosting. So it's just like, oh, we're getting the shipment of stuff. Okay, this is on now. This is actually happening.
Stu and I assumed that they told somebody at a higher level than Stu, and but yeah, we always joke that the two of us have never actually heard it from their mouths that you are going to be hosting. We just heard there was a shipment coming. So
good way to find out, I guess.
Yeah.
So talking about like organizing, and I know you said, kind of everything started up like from, especially cleaning was super important. And we know kind of from watching the news and on Twitter, you obviously worked with local agencies like the City of Edmonton and Alberta Health Services. How many other kind of local organizations did you guys have to reach out to and work with to put this all together?
Yeah, so I'm called the government agencies and such. It was definitely City of Edmonton. They played a huge role. They were incredible to work with, and especially with building that bubble and all that fence line and everything else. They understood what we were trying to do, and they jumped all in with us, which was great. Alberta Health Services, definitely, of course, top of the list in both health regard, but also with food handling, which had taken on a whole new level with COVID-19 and everything else. Dynalife provided all of the tests, so the NHL had a contract with Dynalife. The government of Alberta, of course, were huge supporters and helped us get it over the finish line, as well with the government of Canada. Explore Edmonton, Edmonton Tourism, huge piece of the pie. And then, of course, running the games and everything else, Edmonton Fire was in there, the Edmonton Police Service, who we always work with, Alberta Paramedical, and AGLC. Of course, we had our liquor licenses, of course, in multiple areas of the venue and out in the Scotiabank Plaza, but also with the 50/50 that I run earlier with our community foundation and everything else. So those are kind of the local, I'm going to call them government agencies that I can recall off the top of my head. So many other companies, though, and local Edmontonians helped out with this project. Our partners at William Huff, and they came through on every level. There was so much signage and branding and everything else. And I'm forgetting a million others, but there seriously were probably a million people with some kind of tie to this hub city.
Was everyone inside the bubble receiving a COVID test every day?
Yeah, every single day. So we were doing, at its peak, we were doing 1,700 tests a day, all paid for by the NHL and all managed by Dynalife. Again, Dynalife was great to work with. The nurses and everyone coming in to help us with this were wonderful. I personally had 77 tests throughout the time. Half were nasal and half were throat. And for the record, because this is on record, nasal was my preference. They didn't quite scrape the brain like in some other nasal tests. They went pretty far up, but that was my favorite out of the two. And turnaround time, I think, on the test results was about 12 hours, and we got through the entire hub with flying colors. So it was a lot.
So you were living in the hub bubble during
for a portion of it, yeah. So a couple of us from Oilers, including Stu and I, lived in the bubble at different times. We were able to go home at other times, but even on the days where I was able to go home, I was still back in the next day and going through the COVID tests and symptom checks and everything else. And basically anyone who was going home, which were the local staff, we just had to promise to basically go to the rink and go home each night and don't go to restaurants and bars and go to the beach if we had a beach and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of just stayed pretty isolated and contained even at home with our family and kids, and then back to work each day.
I imagine too, there's also almost kind of like a pressure on everybody too, especially those people who kind of were going home every night. You don't want to be the person to kind of get that COVID test because it's getting out to the media somehow, and you just don't want to be the person to bring this whole thing down. So I think that was like one of the most impressive things. Just from being an outsider kind of looking in, and we would talk every now and then and as well, and that was the one thing that really I think impressed me the most about all this was everybody seemed to really be on the same page, and everybody wanted this thing to kind of go off perfectly.
Yeah, we had over 1,000 people really working on this in the bubble. 750 team staff and players, plus another 400 to 800. With our hotel staff and arena staff and everything else. And you said it best. No one wanted to be the one. And it's funny that this whole COVID thing. If you did get it, you didn't want to be blamed for anything. And it's funny, if this was just the flu and you caught the flu, no one's going to blame you for anything. But because of the world we're in right now, no one wants to, maybe come across that they were negligent or anything else. So everyone was like, they just followed the rules. Everyone had masks on all the time, regardless of distancing. It didn't matter if you were 12 feet from someone or, yards away or right up close. We had masks on the entire time. And it was quite a different environment from in the bubble. And then even coming out of the bubble, I mean, Edmonton's been great, but you had this bit of safety that you felt when you're in the bubble because you're getting tested every day, and you knew the next day if you had it or not, and no one did, which was great. And now coming out, I'm like, hey, where's my test? Is someone going to come to my house to test me? Please come test me. So it was an experience.
So you talk about you were in the bubble for all those days. So once everything's planned out, everything's up and running, what did the average day look like for you?
Average day started with a call, a meeting every morning at the crack of dawn. And I mean, every day for 80 days, weekends, holidays, everything. Crack of dawn, we were on a call with the NHL, their tech ops team, NHL events team, our security team, compliance, building operations. There was probably, some days we had a fewer people on the call if they weren't waking up that early, but it was anywhere from 10 to about 25 different people on that call every day. That's how we started the day. From there, we had 24/7 security and compliance teams working in the venue. And so I have a great team of full-time staff that were helping to manage all our part-time teammates. On arrival at Rogers Place each day, whether you're coming from the hotel or if you're coming from home, you went through symptom and temperature checks every time you came into the venue. Usually then immediately you'd proceed to your testing for your nasal or throat test from there. And then we went about our day. Again, we're preparing for 3 games a day. We're liaising with the NHL and compliance teams all day, just checking in, where are we at, who's been tested, who hasn't, what needs to be cleaned. The cleaning regimen was insane. I wasn't in charge of cleaning, but I saw it happen the entire time, and it was incredible to see how many things and how often we were sanitizing and cleaning spaces. And this is even after knowing that we're getting tested every day and no one has tested positive for it, but you're still going through all those pieces. You have to maintain that. And then it was a lot of hospitality. I mean, we were the locals. There were a handful of locals working on this from a full-time basis with the NHL. And we had, hundreds, if not 1,000 people from New York and Toronto and other parts of the United States working here and living here. We wanted to show them a good time and make sure they felt comfortable through the entire experience. That was a lot of the job. The best chance we had to sit was actually during the games. Once the games had started and they were on the ice, we were up in the press box watching from there. And I think I attended every game except for maybe a handful. And for that handful, I've had friends like Bryce and others say, how dare you not go watch that game? You actually have the opportunity to watch the game. You're back in your hotel room for the night. it was hockey overload, but I loved every minute of it. And the one thing missing, of course, from the whole experience were the fans. Not having them in the building, they provide such a different atmosphere and a great atmosphere for live sports. And again, being the VP of fan experience, that's part of my job, is keeping them engaged and keeping a safe atmosphere in there. And we can't wait to welcome them back.
Speaking of welcoming them back, what do you think it'll be like for someone to go to a hockey game in the future?
I hope it feels like the same hockey games they went to in the past, but right now there's lots of plans in progress. It's going to depend on where the pandemic is by the time we welcome fans back. We have every vendor and supplier contacting us, trying to sell us goods and services that can make everything safe. But it really, we're going to make those final decisions when we actually have a timeline to welcoming fans back in the building. But it's going to involve some distancing, at least early on, masks, cashless payments, mobile tickets, touchless screening. There could be timed entry and exit. So, if you ever went to TELUS World of Science for, the Indiana Jones exhibit, you do timed entry. You sign up for the 11:15 arrival time, and that's when you get there. But no matter what it looks like, it'll be a little different, at least on the onset. We want to keep our staff and fans, I'm going to say the best in the league, the best fans and staff in the league. We want to keep them safe, end of the day. But we want to have that in-bowl experience back to what it was as soon as we possibly can.
So right now, are you kind of, I know the NHL has talked about, early 2021, everybody hopes to be back on the ice. Are you like chatting right now with other leagues like the NBA or MLB or anybody else right now, just to kind of talk about like safety and kind of keeping fans safe?
Yeah, and those were a couple of calls I've been on in the last few weeks have been with industry leaders throughout the States, and we have a Canadian contingent, where we talk to Winnipeg and Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, etc. We even talked to Calgary. We like those guys off the ice. We've been doing a lot of work that way just to see what other groups are planning and thinking of. But even a lot of it is just living your life at Edmonton, and what really matters here is what the local Edmonton experience has been when you go to a grocery store right now, or when you go to a restaurant, when you go, just shopping or to West Edmonton Mall. But what's that experience been like, and what are Edmontonians and Albertans and Canadians expecting when they come back to the venue? So that's where a lot of it has been. Definitely other leagues coming into the bubble. We worked with the UFC. We worked a little bit with the NBA very briefly because they were also trying to get their bubble going. But just on what they had done, UFC I think was the first sports really back in bubble mode, and they sent us a lot of their operational plans, which again, a lot of that fell on the league to come up with, but it was good for us to get a good sense of what other leagues were thinking and doing. But definitely teamwork across the entire industry right now, live entertainment, concerts. There are so many people who rely on this industry for their well-being and to make ends meet and everything else. And so trying to, reestablish this back in, our local day-to-day and what we do is top priority right now.
Obviously, we've talked about, it was amazing that you guys were able to pull this off with yourself and all of your other partners. What's the one thing that you're most proud of, and is there like maybe a lesson learned from everything that you went through?
I think two things, and I'll try to think of a lesson learned. There are definitely lots of lessons. We were learning them every day. But the one element or one of them is, the fact that we won the proposal and our bid to host was a huge achievement. And again, it took thousands of people, really. It was a core small project team, but that branched out huge. A lot of it is thanks to our Edmontonians who kept Edmonton safe, and our rates were insanely low compared to some other markets that may have been looked at. The other part that I'm really proud of is our team at Oilers Entertainment Group, the fellow hotels, the JW Marriott, the Sutton, the Delta, the Matrix, the restaurants that were involved. We had some excursions at restaurants and golf courses, but the teamwork and cooperation, and you guys touched on it earlier as well, that everyone just came together, understood what we were trying to do, and we were never safe. Like we were never at the point where we're like, oh, we have this running and we're good. It could have ended at any moment if there was an outbreak, or one person gets sick, and then who knows where it goes from there. So just that teamwork all in. Biggest learnings is also a bit a part of that. It's how many people you rely on to put on an event like this. Again, so many groups might think of themselves and the few that they touch, and I can't even think of everyone who helped, because I didn't touch every area of the bubble, but just that teamwork that really came together to put this on. And I keep saying it, but that's really what the biggest learning was, and the biggest thrill and achievement in all of this.
Were you at the game where Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup, and can you share any stories from that night?
I was at the game. I was actually at the game. I was at all the games, right? But I was at the game on game 5, and it was 2-1 Tampa in the third, 8 minutes left. And one of our conversions guys, when we were getting ready to do some post-game thing, said, oh, wouldn't it be crazy if they tied it up and this went to 2 overtimes? Well, guess what happened? They tied it up within a minute of him saying that, and they went to 2 overtimes, and Dallas won. So we had to kind of start over and rethink about the next game. So fast forward to the actual last game, and definitely in the building. My I guess the privilege that I had, first time ever in my career, was setting up the locker room for the post-game celebration. So you're sitting there watching the game. Tampa's got a lead, but you cannot go in the room until that final horn goes and they've won the game. And so we bust in the room. There's probably about 6 or 8 of us from the league, 3 of our conversions guys, myself, and we're setting up the room. We're hanging up the plastic and the poly. We're setting out the champagne. Our food and beverage team's in there. We're throwing up banners. We're throwing out all the T-shirts, the hoodies, the hats. They do wrestling belts now. So I guess for the last couple of years, the league has made these diamond wrestling belts that have, the NHL logo and Stanley Cup champions. We're laying these things out and just setting up that room. And you have maybe 10 minutes. And then within 10 minutes, some player is going to be coming back to the room either to grab something or maybe to bring the cup back or who knows what. And we want to make sure we're out of the room by then. So it was like a 10-minute, get everything up and out of there and out of the room. We then spent the rest of the time, of course, out of the room and let them celebrate in there. But I think it was around 1 o'clock in the morning. So this is 4 hours post game. And there are still players in skates in the locker room celebrating. Like, they haven't taken their equipment off. These guys are they're having a great time of their life. Reminds me of Ryan Smith's last game here in Edmonton, where he stayed in his equipment for hours and hours and hours after the game in the Oiler locker room. You never want to give up that moment. I mean, as an outsider looking in, I assume you never want to give up that moment. We were as close as we possibly could. After that, it kind of spilled out into the plaza, into the Scotiabank Plaza right outside Rogers Place and up into the JW. But the Lightning staff, and I think led by former Oiler Maroon, were out there celebrating and having a great time and popping champagne outside in the plaza as well. And one nice moment that I didn't get to witness, but I heard about after, was one of the Tampa players actually sought out one of our ice ops and engineering guys and said, hey, like during a celebration, and like beelined it to him and said, hey, like all your work, you guys did an amazing job. You kept the ice in amazing shape. We saw you guys, you do a thankless job. And he took the time to thank him directly. And that was like spread across our whole team, that one comment. And then of course he was back to celebrating. But the fact that the player took the moment to come and thank some of the staff was incredible.
Well, that's huge. I imagine, they'll remember that for the rest of their lives. And I love hearing that stuff.
It was amazing. It's the stuff that, I've never been a part of at that level. I've been a part of the Oil Kings championships in 2012 and in 2014. And we had, a Capitals championship with the baseball team back in 2011. But, winning the Stanley Cup and seeing this in a bubble environment, this thing was off the hook. It was crazy.
We're running out of time, unfortunately. I know you're a busy guy. So of course we always end on a few kind of fun questions. So during this whole experience, and actually since the pandemic started, we've been playing a lot of Call of Duty together online. And actually we were just playing last night. And so I have to ask, Call of Duty is a very popular game. You're pretty good at it. So do you have any Call of Duty tips for any new players?
Yeah, I think I've been a gamer since like 1985 when the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, and I've been a gamer ever since. And Bryce, we've been online a lot. I don't think you really want to take any tips from me, but I will share one, and that is you're playing Call of Duty, always enter through the window. Whatever you do, don't use the door, jump through the window. It's the best way into a room. But I will say, spending so many nights in the bubble and living in the hotel, my Xbox and Call of Duty got me through some of those nights. So you're in isolation. I had it set up in my hotel room, and Bryce knows this, but I'd get back after one of the late games, and I'd hop on just to clear my head and do something that's a little bit of normal for me, and do that. If I wasn't doing that, I was watching Cobra Kai on Netflix, which I've said it's filled a void that I didn't even know existed before. Being able to see what came of Daniel and Johnny from Cobra Kai, those two things, that and Call of Duty, got me through definitely some of the long nights and days in the bubble.
Just on a last note, are there any other book, movie, TV, music recommendations that you think our listeners should check out?
I'll go with a book. My wife, Jill, just last night recorded for our daughter's reading week at their school. They're doing virtual reading weeks. And she just read Miss Nelson is Missing. It's a great children's book that I think a bunch of us read as kids. And we just recorded that last night. It's actually available on YouTube if anyone would like to watch her read the book. She's going to hate me for saying that, but I'm going to recommend that book, Miss Nelson is Missing.
Great. And we'll also try to maybe have a link to that YouTube video in our episode notes.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Jody. Our buddy Chris will love that you recommended that players enter buildings by jumping through windows. He'll absolutely love that tip. Are you going to be on Call of Duty tonight?
Yeah, I'll be on tonight, same time, same channel, and we'll get our double XP. We'll get our hours in.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, Jody.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So joining us now on the second part of our interview is Stu Ballantyne. Stu, how are you today? And welcome to Overdue Finds.
You know what? Thank you for having me. Looking forward to speaking about this great topic.
So, Stu, so obviously you work with Jody, who we just chatted with, but you're the Senior Vice President of Operations and General Manager of Rogers Place. So, Jody had walked us through a little bit on kind of the end of the season and everything, and kind of the proposal process with the NHL. So I guess from a building standpoint and kind of Edmonton being selected, how important was having Rogers Place, I guess, being a new building and being connected to the JW Marriott in Edmonton being selected?
Yeah, the physical assets of Ice District and Rogers Place really boded well for Hub City. We're larger than any other NHL facility, so it gave us a lot of footprint to be able to basically morph into a 12-team playoff hub, and that's not normal in our world, but it is in a facility that can accommodate it. And adding in Ice Plaza and JW and all of those buildings that are interconnected really boded well for our bid. The NHL wasn't interested initially in coming to Canada, but with the way that COVID was going, we were certainly keen to continue to compete. And it was an interesting process getting into it, but ultimately, I think the NHL understood that this building was going to be one of their best assets if they're going to get this thing done.
I was just going to quickly say, as an outsider looking in, and I'm on Twitter, and I saw kind of the rumors all summer, and you kept hearing there was times where it was like, oh, Vegas is going to be announced next week, and they're a shoe in, and I imagine those kind of COVID numbers for a place like that, and then compared to where our COVID numbers earlier in the summer were, that obviously played a huge part, I imagine, in Edmonton being selected.
Yeah, and it came right down to the wire. We were initially, there was 10 cities bidding, and then we heard there was 4, and then there was 2, and then it was back to 4, and ultimately 2 being Toronto and Edmonton. But it was challenging, but it was worth staying in. We knew that with our business being virtually shut down in March, this was a great bridge project for us to be able to do. It allowed us to showcase what Edmonton as a city could do, what the facilities and ice district itself had in store. And, it gave us 80 days to convince the NHL that they need to do more things here in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the playoffs, Rogers Place was hosting up to 3 games a day. What were some of the challenges with having 6 teams coming through during the day?
It's ice. We've got a really good reputation with our ice crew and the quality of ice that we produce, through a normal season through the winter. The challenges of hosting hockey in August is not new to us. We had the Hlinka Gretzky Cup in 2018. And so we had a bit of experience, but that was 2 games a day, 3 games a day with NHL professional players versus, amateur junior players was one of the things that we were very, very worried about. Our guys did an amazing job. And as we went through, we really started to realize that, everything was working as it's supposed to. And we got it done. It's a long day, though, for the ice crew. And, we were not wanting to incur overtime. So we had to, dip into our part-time pool and really get it done. And those guys, I can't say enough about how much work they did to keep the ice underneath the players and give them a quality sheet to play on, because that's, obviously that's a big part of making sure that you're hosting great hockey. And we had no complaints at all through the entire process about the ice.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's huge. And as somebody who watches a lot of hockey, a lot of times you hear just from other buildings around the league, like, oh, like the ice in this place is terrible, or you see the puck bouncing everywhere. I watched a lot of the games, and you never heard any commentators mention that or kind of hear through media or Twitter that was the case. So I thought that was really neat. But what about the dressing rooms, though? Because most arenas, of course, you've got like the Oilers dressing room, and I thought that was like one of the kind of the most interesting things was seeing like teams like the Calgary Flames using the Oilers dressing room. How was that kind of decided, and what was that like turnover like with so many teams being in there?
From the time that the NHL was focused on Toronto and Edmonton, they told us that both cities are hosting 12 visiting teams. And so pretty much sent us a message on our exhibition game with Calgary when Calgary got the Oilers dressing room. Even Calgary was tweeting out that it was very odd. But that was the nature of what the NHL wanted to do. We weren't the home team, we were the host team. And so big difference there. And so moving around all the dressing rooms, between the 2 facilities, the downtown community arena and Rogers Place, we have 13 dressing rooms. And so accommodating 12 teams, if it was a midget tournament or a peewee tournament, amateur, junior hockey, not as much of an issue, but these are pro teams used to a lot of space, a lot of facilities, coaches' offices, medical rooms. And so we literally stretched every room we had. We turned our star rooms, which are our talent rooms for concerts, into coaches' offices. We took space downstairs for storage in the parkade. And not having fans and not having a lot of people in the building left a lot of real estate for us to be able to build it out. So as far as finding the space, we were able to do that. Moving teams around because they weren't based in a dressing room for the duration of the tournament. Every single day we had teams moving in and out. So cleaning, sanitizing, dealing with, packing cases coming in and out. A lot of bumps and bruises in the wall, and we're busy fixing those right now.
Mm-hmm. Once the playoffs started, what did an average day look like for you?
Early morning, series of meetings, very much, web-based meetings with everybody. My initial time was in the bubble. I stayed at the hotel for the first 20 days to get through the move-in and get us playing. Then I was able to change my credential level and still interact with the NHL people, but I was able to go home at night, which was a big step. And what we did is we took our senior team and put different people in, basically did a relay through that. But early morning, 3 or 4 meetings, first thing in the morning, getting ready, making sure, variety on the menus, trying to figure out where everybody was going to eat. We were chasing this project from the get-go all the way through, because you're dealing with young millionaires who are used to being at home with big houses and everything at their hands, and now they're locked into a bubble, and they don't have all the access that they would normally have to family, friends, everything that they're used to eating, and they're athletes. So it's not like they eat, arena food every day. They're very different. So it was a busy day getting into the first game, second game, and then third game. And we split the duties so that somebody wouldn't have to be there for a full pull, but that could be upwards of 16 to 18 hours and then home and crash.
I imagine those playoff games would have looked a lot different if they were living on arena food, lots of hot dogs and nachos and stuff like that. Hockey might not have looked as good as it did.
Yeah, a little bit slower, shorter
right.
shifts. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe more relatable to the person watching, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's true, right? I mean, you're not seeing them eat popcorn on the bench, so a lot of Gatorade, a lot of water, pallets and pallets of stuff came through the facility while all these teams were there. We also had, the added bonus of dealing with the major flood that happened on the 16th of July. And so we had 5 or 6 days of very nervous NHL and OEG people to see if the building was going to come back to life, because all of our digital assets were damaged in the flood. And so we had to replace, repair, and dry out a massive amount of equipment to get the scoreboard and all the ring LEDs to come back to life.
Yeah, there had been just so much going on over the last few months. I totally forgot all about that freak storm that came through. And yeah, there was all the pictures on the news and social media about the entrance, and everybody's like, oh, of course, this is just 2020 striking again. Here we are. We're supposed to host this amazing playoff tournament, and Mother Nature strikes, of course. So no, that's amazing. You guys were able to pull that all together. So I have to ask, because as of when we're recording this, the NBA is still playing in the bubble. I think their finals might end tonight even. So, them also being in the bubble, did you guys work together through maybe the NHL or?
Not necessarily. The NHL was certainly following, the NBA started before the NHL did, even though the NHL had made the decision to go to bubble. The NBA had gone to Disney World, and we were looking at some of the earlier tweets about the food, players not overly happy, and then started to look at what the set design would look like, with no fans. And the NHL was pretty happy with how their set design was done, and so no interest in changing to more of the NBA style. And we certainly took it in the chops on the food from the design perspective from the NHL. They said, you can't do this. These airplane tray meals just do not look appetizing. And how are we going to get people for, the better part of 60 plus days on this kind of a food program? So, you know what? We worked with the hotels, the NHL, and our own culinary staff to try and get the variety. We did guest chef appearances. Trevor Connie, the Master Chef Canada, came in to do a couple of nights. All of our normal chefs also did feature nights. We brought people in. Former executive chef from the building came back to do who specializes in vegan food. We had him in for a couple of nights. And so all of those things added to have us, okay, let's do an NHL delivery. The NBA is doing well. They got off to a bit of a rocky start, but we're doing well, and we just wanted to make sure that we did everything for the players.
You were inside the bubble for quite a while. Did you have a favorite meal that you got to eat in the hotel?
You know what? I like everything. So it was, I would say that the whole summer, we had steak night once a week in Studio 99 in the arena. And they had a cowboy steak, a 24-ounce ribeye that will be memorable. So didn't have that more than once, but certainly that was a great meal. And you know what? It was really good. I brought lunches from home and then typically ate my dinner at the arena for the most part. The hotel, to start off, was great. The breakfasts were great. You know, I don't wake up to bacon and eggs every day. And so that was kind of fun. Typically would do all my meetings, my web meetings from the hotel room, have breakfast, and then zip over prior to the first game, make sure everything was operational and everybody was happy. That was probably my biggest job, was trying to make sure everybody had everything they needed to get everything done.
Who were some of the unsung heroes of the bubble that people might not have heard about?
Two of my staff, two Matts, I'll call them. Matt Messer, who leads the ice crew. You know, we had to force him to take time off. He just literally was there all the time, wanting to make sure that the ice was in perfect shape. And, you know, Dan Craig and Mike Craig from the NHL, who are legends in the game, are breathing over his neck every day. And I would spend a bit of time with them to make sure that Matt was okay. And they were also worried about how much time he spent, but he really took it to heart to make sure that the ice was really good. The other one is Matt Ruptash, that most people wouldn't be aware of, but Matt was probably the single person to save the arena on the night of the flood, and was able to get two pipes to rejoin so that water wasn't coming back into the arena, and just to get the coupling back in place where we could get the majority of the water not flowing through the floors of the building and back out through its proper system. So Matt did an amazing job. There was so many others, but you know, those two really come to light because of the amount of time and what they did to save Hub City.
Nice. I always love hearing those stories about kind of the staff behind the scenes who, you know, nobody might not know about, and, you know, they come together and help, you know, basically put this thing, like, have it up and running. And I love those stories. So Edmonton's actually also going to be hosting the World Junior Hockey Championships here this winter. And it's announced it's going to be kind of a Hub City setting once again. So I have to ask, will the bubble for the World Junior Hockey Championships be set up differently, or will you guys pretty much be replicating it?
There'll be a lot of you know, obviously there's some best practices. The NHL spent a lot of money to be able to get their bubble to work and go the distance. Very different, type of an event, in the sense that the World Juniors is 3 weeks. You know, it's 30 games, 10 teams versus 12. They're junior players, so 17, 18, 19 years old. And the teams move and eat and train and play as a unit, versus an NHL team where it's made up of individuals. And yes, they are a team, but the coach is managing NHL players. The coach is a little bit more dictatorial, I think, to junior players. So a bit of a different style. The teams will base in a dressing room for the duration, and so we won't be moving the teams. But overall, behind the scenes, the ice, the laundry, all of those kind of things, the meals, a little bit different in the sense, like I said, they'll eat as a team versus, you know, we had a lot of, you know, Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes coming through to the hotels for players that wanted something special. These players will eat together, and so it makes it a little bit easier on the building, and probably a little easier for Hockey Canada to manage.
Imagine you'll just have to make sure that Wi-Fi is going good. Lots of online gaming between those guys, I imagine.
You'd be surprised the pro players are the same. We had lots of stations, golf simulators, ping pong tables, a lot of things inside the building for them to do.
Are there any fun stories that you can share from the night that Tampa Bay won the cup?
It was interesting. You're watching two ownership tables of 3 to 4 people at each, a handful of families watching a game, obviously fairly intense. It was weird watching a celebration on the ice in your own building when it's not your own team, and also with literally nobody. Pyro show and streamers and everything, is a made for TV. It's a TV set. So I'll never forget that evening, and I hope someday I'm able to witness the Oilers hoist the cup again live, because it was amazing to watch Tampa Bay, but nowhere near as much fun as it would be to see our own team win.
When we were chatting with Jody, and actually I didn't touch on this in our interview with him, but I know that we're friends, and he would kind of send us as a group kind of pictures of a puck about to be dropped on one of the games. Can you, I guess, share a little bit of what that was like watching an NHL game in an empty arena, like just the sounds, and how weird was that?
It's very different, and they had 2 people full time during the broadcast to edit the sound, and the conversation between the players echoes through the entire building when there's no fans to absorb that sound. So 2 players not happy, dropping an F-bomb, and I'm up in the press box and I can hear it from up there. And so you're getting a lot more of the game sounds. I think the interesting thing was, you watched on TV, there was fan noises, whether they were boos or jeers or cheers, and you get a little bit sucked into the fact that maybe there is fans there, because you're hearing those things when a good play was happening or a major hit, and you hear the crowd noise go, ooh. There's no crowd, right? I and these other 50 people are the crowd. So that was a bit different. It was neat. I took pictures every single day. I wrote myself a blog because I wanted to make sure that someday, if I was gonna to write about it or talk about it, I had all of the anecdotes that went on, and there was funny stuff that happened every day. There was days where everybody's blood pressure went up. We just went through the ride together, and I can't say enough about how symbiotic the relationship between the NHL and OEG and our Rogers Place staff. It just really worked well. Everybody worked together knowing that we had a goal, and the goal was, we wanted to get to the point where our team hoisted the Stanley Cup.
So what's the one thing that you're most proud of, and is there something that you would do differently?
I think I'm most proud of how the staff reacted. We're used to dealing with 18,500 people for a hockey game, plus the 2 teams. And, now we're dealing with, a number of teams, but a lot of those positions are fairly boring when you don't have a volume of people going through. We're used to, that whole energy that the fans bring. And our staff just, literally stood in there, and, everybody walking by them happened to be a NHL player or coach or general manager. So a little bit different for them, and to see the players in a casual way. I think the staff will be one of the most memorable moments. Very proud of everything they did. The full-time staff and the ice crew to get everything done will be, they've solidified themselves as one of the best ice crews in the entire league. And they got to do it in front of all the senior people from the NHL. And I think that's our legacy for Edmonton and for the building is how the NHL views what we were able to achieve. And that will be a bond that's there forever.
Just before we go, we have a question that we like to ask all of the guests on the podcast. Do you have a book, movie, TV, music recommendation of something that you think our listeners should check out?
Yeah. No, I'm a parrot head from 1974. So Living and Dying in Three-Quarter Time by Jimmy Buffett. You have to spend time with that. And if you haven't been to Key West and you haven't, gone to Captain Tony's for a beer, that's one of the things you need to do in your life.
So I have to ask, and this wasn't in. We kind of sent you an outline of some of the stuff that we would be touching on, but we kind of heard a rumor that before you got into your current role, that you used to maybe dabble in race car driving. Is that true?
That is true. I started my business career with Bridgestone Tire and inherited the motorsport portfolio. And I had a couple of individuals that came with that portfolio that said, listen, if you're going to understand our world, you better at least get behind the wheel. And so they took me and sent me to a driving school. And racing is a drug, its own drug in itself. And you get hooked pretty quick. And so I started to dabble in amateur racing and then got my pro license and I raced cars for 6 years. Interesting enough, I didn't even start this whole process until after my wife and I met each other. So normally you do these things when you're single and you have no responsibilities. I had responsibilities, and even my daughter was born in my latter years of racing, and it was a lot of fun. I'll equate it to you get to go to Disneyland and you get handed the keys. That's kind of what racing's about. It's you have no time to think about other things in life other than what's in front of you in the next 50 to 200 feet, and you just have to keep making decisions. And I go back to it a lot in my business career because you can't sit and pine over anything. You got to get on and move forward. So yeah, no, it was a great time. I miss it like you wouldn't believe. It's very expensive, and children going to university and houses and everything else, gets in the way. And a famous quote from Gilles Villeneuve when he sold his family home and bought a race car, and his wife said to him, what were you thinking?" He said, "You can sleep in a car, but you can't drive a house."
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Well, Stu, thank you so much for joining us today. This was amazing getting to talk with you, and just kind of getting all those kind of fun behind the scenes details that as a hockey fan myself, it kept me captivated all summer, and I think for the rest of the city too. Even if you're not necessarily a hockey fan, you can't help but be very proud of the work that you and your team did over the summer. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It was definitely a team and a group effort to get it done. And the city, the province, the NHL, all of our staff did a great job to be able to pull it off. And you know what? Edmonton will be able to live on this ability and reputation for a long time.
All right, Caroline.
Yeah.
Those were awesome.
It was so great to talk with them.
It was really cool that both Jody and Stu were able to share their experiences with us, and I learned a lot. It's funny because I worked in sports marketing for like 3 years before I came to EPL. So I know some of the kind of behind the scenes stuff that really goes on into just producing a regular NHL game. So the fact that we hosted all of the Stanley Cup playoffs here was quite incredible. How did you enjoy it?
I thought it was so interesting to listen to their experience, to hear everything that goes into it. I have not worked in sports marketing or sports anything, and so I was taking so many notes just on what they were saying. One of the things that I had not really considered was what Stu was saying about you're not the home team, you're the host team, and how that would have been a shift in thinking and approach for the Oilers, and that was kind of backed up by what Jody was talking about with the people who were living in town but living in the bubble. You could kind of have your normal life, but not at the same time. And then we saw great pictures like the ones you mentioned of Calgary in Edmonton's dressing room.
Yeah, I've loyal listeners to the show know I am actually a St. Louis Blues fan. I do like the Oilers, but the St. Louis Blues are my team. And yeah, I think even at the time too, I had tweeted out a photo of the Blues being set up in the Oilers dressing room that night, and I was like, worlds are colliding right now. This is so weird. But yeah, no, hats off to Jody, Stu, and really everybody, hotel workers, ice crew,
Matt and Matt.
the Mats.
Yeah. Giving a shout out to them.
Yeah, everybody did such an amazing job. And like I touched on in the interviews, I really think even if you're not big hockey fans, I think as Edmontonians, it's something that really we should all be proud of. And I think it really showcased our city in a really positive light in kind of a dreary year.
Absolutely. I think that if there had been things that weren't working, we would have heard about it. There was when Stu was talking about the experience of getting the food ready for them, thinking of how many people, all of the people in this bubble have social media. All it takes is a couple tweets from one of the bigger named hockey players to get these things. It was reminding me of the remember the lettuce sandwich from Fire Festival.
Yes, yeah, it was like the cheese sandwich.
Yes, yeah. If that had been the experience, like the eyes of the world were on Edmonton, and I think they really came through to have a moment that hearing how much it meant to Tampa Bay to be the winners of the Stanley Cup, that they were able to move forward with hosting this tournament. Like it's just a weekend thing, but
no big deal.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But it really did have that international level of attention that really showcased Edmontonians working together to create something great. Before we wrap up, Bryce, can you share what we'll be chatting about on our next episode, which will be coming out next week?
Yeah, Caroline, we're into the spooky season, so which means Halloween is right around the corner. And we thought that it would be the perfect time to chat about one of the greatest horror stories ever told, and that's The Haunting of Hill House. We'll be discussing not only the classic novel from Shirley Jackson, but also the many film adaptations, including the popular Netflix series. So yeah, I'm not as familiar with the book. I'm going to be trying to cram that in before our next recording, Caroline, but I'm familiar with the movie and the Netflix show, and I look forward to chatting all about that one with you.
I do too. I think it's going to be really great. And if anyone listening wants to maybe check out the book before you listen to our episode, you can read the ebook version right now. It's available for everyone, no waiting, with your Edmonton library card. So go to epl.ca to get the details on how you can grab your ebook copy.
Mm-hmm.
We want to thank Jody Young and Stu Ballantyne from the Edmonton Oilers for joining us today and sharing some great stories with us. We really appreciate them taking their time out of what I can only imagine must be very busy schedules to come and talk with us. We wanted to say thank you as well to Sean May from the Oilers for helping us set up these interviews.
Yeah, we really hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you haven't yet, we encourage you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Even more importantly, please tell a friend about the show. And of course, we love to hear from our listeners. You can always email us at podcast@epl.ca. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.